Okay, so Miles Morales is out. Let's take a look at Spider-Man 3!
I was thinking please, but whatever.
Okay, I've teased and danced around this for far too long with previous videos, so it's time to turn off the music or face the dark or whatever. Now, for those wondering, are we swinging into the most infamous Spider-Man game of all time? No, this is it. Spider-Man 3 is the official game adaptation of the movie, Spider-Man 3, and while I had a brief fling with the PS2 version, this is an entirely different eight-legged freak. The main event, the follow-up to Treyarch's groundbreaking, but slightly poorly aged Spider-Man 2. Sure love the water in this game. Released day and day with the film, May 4th, 2007, SM3 was on no less than 8 different machines, 2 of them being handled by Treyarch, with Vicarious Visions picking up most of the slack. I know why you're all here though, so we'll be focusing on Treyarch's worst/best version of the game for a litany of reasons, which we'll certainly get into. So flip your hair out of your face and pull yourself together. Let us douse the flames of the trash fire that is Spider-Man 3.
Bring it.
Alright, so, whoa, okay, we're just playing the game now. That's, Jesus, Uncle Ben Christ, I forgot. So, yeah, this is a very weird thing about SM3, most versions of it anyway, is that it seemingly starts mid-mission with zero setup, as you're immediately pitted against waves of nameless armored bad guys who appear in just about every Spider-Man game. And good old Bruce starts admonishing you for the upteenth time.
Okay, now stop messing around, go find out who is blowing up this building and save the day. I'll even open the door for you.
Look, I love the guy, and it was fun in the previous 2 games, but the joke is wearing a little thin by now.
Your health will regenerate up to your endurance level, but taking damage will wear away your endurance. Grab power-ups to increase your endurance. You want to hear me say endurance again?
Yes, okay, thank you, Bruce!
Endurance. Okay, there you go.
I guess a part of the problem is just how long and drawn out this entire tutorial really is. It's just exhausting. Attacks, counters, super moves, and then basic stuff like spider sense, wall crawling, and just like friggin' running, all of it mandatory.
Use the sprint button for extra speed.
It would have been really nice that since you are playing Spider-Man 3, Bruce could have gone, "Whoa, okay there, King Spider Shit. You're used to this stuff? Well, then by all means, take it from here." And you could just take it from there. Moving on, after I intentionally fail every QTE because all of them are hilarious, we are treated with one of the most defining moments in video game history.
Help! Please! Someone! I'm going to die!
And let that set the tone for the rest of the video. Now, if you thought we were done with tutorials, take a seat and strap in so you can adequately prepare yourself for just how fucking wrong you are. You immediately start another tutorial section that's so buggy and messed up, I have to believe, like in many parts of the game, Treyarch knew how bad it was, but just said fuck it. Now, that's not a, we're lazy fuck it, but rather a, oh my god, yeah, that's really embarrassing, but we have no time fuck it, which we'll get into later. After 2 forced missions, the game then sort of actually kinda starts with the real plot, but not really. Spidey is doing great, his life is perfect, he has a controlling and jealous girlfriend. God, they did MJ so dirty in SM3. But oh no, that nefarious Eddie Brock is causing a ruckus down at the old Daily Bugle. There's a bunch of made-up gangs terrorizing the city, and some guy got turned into sand. Off the bat, the story set up here is probably the most padded, unfocused, and unsatisfying I can think of in a major Spidey title. Now, this is not surprising considering it's based on Spider-Man 3, but for the sake of argument, let's boil the movie down to its main video game-esque plot points, as it's a four-way dance between Spidey, Sandman, Venom, and James Franco. That's already a lot, and way more stuff than, say, the plot of Spidey 2. But for whatever reason, the game version Chef Boyardee overstuffs a ton of other villains into this thing when it was already filled to burst.
Perfect.
Lizard, Scorpion, Rhino, Kingpin, Kraven, and Calypso all have several missions involving them, which actually pushes the main plot aside for the majority of the game. More than halfway into it, you finally get your first incredibly janky boss fight against the new Goblin, but Sandman and symbiote stuff are all backloaded into the game, which in my opinion is pretty poor pacing. You are instead tasked with taking out the C-tier villains for little rhyme and or reason, and with zero connectivity between them. Kirk Connors just happened to turn into the Lizard and had thousands of hours of sewer sex beneath New York City, resulting in waves and waves of offspring. Totally separate from that, Scorpion and Rhino are involved in something called, biomech-con. Wait, what was it actually called?
Mecha Biocon.
Oh, that was the real name. Holy shit. Finally, there's a whole other major villain / storyline. This guy. Guy Man. He's an evil capitalist who wants to bomb things, and thusly is called the Mad Bomber. Yeah, this is one of Treyarch's OCs, and his plot literally gets more screen time than Sandman or Venom, and again, he has nothing to do with anything. Now, for comparison's sake, in Spidey 2, Professor Squid is used pretty well, and either has a fight or a story cutscene involving him about every hour or so until the credits roll. The game is good in not making you forget about him, despite smaller villains being introduced throughout. But in this, it's a goddamn battle royale. Everything comes at you so fast, and so suddenly it feels like flicking through 10 years of Spidey comics, stopping at a random page, then suddenly flicking through again. If you want a solid, cohesive story, Spider-Man 3 fails to deliver in amazing fashion. Treyarch obviously wanted to do a lot here and probably started building the game with whatever padding villains they wanted, but maybe weren't initially aware of just how much shit Sony would force into Spider-Man 3.
If you know what I'm talking about.
Raimi didn't want to put Venom in it at all, and instead wanted to focus on Sandman and Harry, so Treyarch were probably double shocked when they got this script and saw there would be 3 main villains and lots of other Peter-focused storylines, and I guess not being able to afford throwing out all the early work they had done, had to sort of just shove everything together, and the whole package suffers because of it. Exacerbating things is the fact that since the wait between Spidey 2 and 3 was a beefy 4 years, Treyarch, I'm assuming at Activision's behest, released Ultimate Spider-Man, a fun game to be sure, but it left the team only 2 years to finish Spider-Man 3, which was quite the task already since they needed to move into the 7th generation of consoles as well. So, in summary, it's due to this fractured and rushed development cycle why playing Spider-Man 3 feels a lot like this.
Better not touch that again. These things could blow at any time.
Okay, we've already covered some negatives, obviously, but issues with Spider-Man 3, aside from just bugs and poor pacing, remain far more fundamental. Some key things that didn't need to be changed were, and really none of them for the better in my opinion. As you play through the game, you'll be accruing a kind of invisible XP that will decide when you've earned a new move or ability. Why this is important is that you can't choose this move or ability at all, it just sort of happens. Now, while that might be fine for things like web swinging speed, when it comes to attacks, combos, or health, you can't pick and choose what you want to prioritize. I always felt the Spidey store, while admittedly an antiquated way to level up, still, worked in letting you customize Spidey, and that's the key word here. customize. If two players start this game up and get to the first goblin fight, their radioactive spider powers will be the exact same. It definitely feels like a step back. Now, staying on the subject of combat, well, it's terrible. Throughout the wall crawler's career, the only game I can think of that has worse feeling fisticuffs is Spider-Man Sinister 6 on the PC, which is a point and click. I'm not talking about the variety of things you can pull off, mind you, but rather the feel. There's very little impact to just about every punch and kick you throw. Animations are kinda funky, and I guess the Foley guy thought a wet paper bag that had a fart trapped inside of it was sufficient for superhero sound effects. This is actually a major problem because you spent a lot of time hitting things in Spider-Man games. I mean, he is a vengeance-obsessed asshole after all. And it's doubly true here in Spider-Man 3. Combat tours are a frequent side mission diversion. Honestly, if I could choose only one thing to fix in this game, it would be to overhaul how the fighting feels. It would just make the core gameplay loop much more enjoyable while still keeping all the hilarious jank the game has to offer. And it has a whole lot to offer there. Some of that jank is in the graphics, as you can see. I'm using the PC version just for variety's sake, but I think no matter how you slice it, with this being a mid-2007 title, mind you, is just kind of embarrassing. I'm giving the game the best possible chance by playing this version, so you can only imagine how rough it was on, say, the 360, and it's pretty clear Treyarch was working on an outdated engine here, and it was simply upported to HD without taking much advantage of the new hardware. Character models are pretty undefendable, especially if you were to compare to most things that were out in 2007. It's a real shame because I feel Treyarch could have really nailed this visually if they were given more time. Unfortunately, they were indeed very busy as the studio had just put out Call of Duty 3 the year before, helped out on Web of Shadows the very next year, as well as putting out World at War. So the time and manpower needed to do a few more graphical passes was probably a luxury they couldn't afford. Putting the jank and bugs aside though, it would have really helped this game out immensely to have at least been a showpiece for the 360 and PS3 instead of, you know, this.
Parker! That's the third call I got about giant lizards running amok in Gramercy Park. Giant lizards!
The last negative about Spidey the Third, which I think is almost inexcusable for a superhero game, is its collectibles. The state of them! Wait, you thought there were comic books or suits? Cosmic Spidey 2099 Ben Reilly? No, there's no time for that. What there is time for, though, is really boring skyscraper and subway tokens, I guess. They do nothing. And finally, once you've beaten the game, then Spidey emblems populate the city map. And wouldn't you know it, they also do nothing. Now, there are unlockable characters, and it's just insane to get them. Beat the game once, you can play through the entire thing in the black suit. Beat the game with that, you unlock the extreme trust fund billionaire weirdo with daddy issues, New Goblin. Beat the game with him, and you've apparently unlocked Venom. I've looked all over the net zones, and I can't find a single picture or video of this, so I don't know. But I do know someone who might be able to shed some light on this. Godzilla Mendoza, who specializes in superheroing in video game form. So what's the deal here, dude?
Listen, man, I've done my time on Spider-Man 3, played all the versions, made like a dozen videos in Spider-Man games, and despite what a bunch of websites say, you can only play as Black Suit Spidey and Harold Goblin. And to no one's surprise, it uses terrible 6-axis controls because 2007! So yeah, I don't know where these rumors started from really, but no. Listen, don't ask me about Spider-Man 3 again. I paid my debt to society.
Oh wow, he just left there, didn't he? Whoa, okay, thanks for that. Go check out Mendoza's channel for more insight into Spidey 3 if you like.
Mendoza!
Now, aside from all that, there's of course lots of other little things in the game that cause annoying buzzes of my mat sense, but we must press on. Now, despite all of this, I still kinda like the game. Here's the thing. Spider-Man 3, much like the film, is a series of peaks and valleys. For every monotonous fight, there's a hilarious QTE. For every bland collectible that does nothing, there's a badly shot or jittery cutscene ready to be laughed at. And even though the story is a mess, it's a wonderfully moronic mess. Just like the theme of the film that dealt with dark and light sides encroaching on Peter's life, there's two parts to this game. Fun, dumb, wacky shit, and then just, like, regular shit. See, as unfocused as it is, each mission has variety. You're forced to take Mary Jane on thrill rides, while people below you get mugged, disarming explosives in bonker hacking segments that make no sense, grabbing Scorpion's tail and almost destroying a major bridge with it, throwing flaming barrels at the lizard's love sack, and then be flagrantly doing Spider-Man shit out in the open streets of New York, dressed as Peter Parker, not giving a fuck. Everything is just so over the top without a lick of sense or subtlety, and that's pretty entertaining. This is like, and you're probably going to predict what I'm about to say here, the Room of Spider-Man games.
Chicken, Peter, you just a little chicken. Chip, 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 chip.
Aside from all that, the web swinging feels pretty good. Maybe not as good as Spidey 2, but it works fine. I like how they expanded the map a fair bit. You can go to Liberty Island as well as Ellis and the Governor's Island, which I guess is where Ellis and the Governor live, and there's a good amount of side activities that aren't nearly as repetitive or as soul-crushing as what was offered in its predecessor. Finally, I think the boss fights, despite being very spongy and long-winded, exhibit some very fun camera work, and of course, feature more of those wacky QTEs. Just stick it into my veins! Listen, you can definitely feel a good game somewhere in this mess, but it all comes off so badly and so ineptly that it's really hard to recommend if you're looking for a polished, solid Spider-Man cinematic adventure. But if you're looking for absolute bollocks and just want a really dumb game to laugh at, then that's very much what this is. Like I alluded to before, Spider-Man 3 shipped on the 360, the PS3, PS2, the Wii, the GBA, the DS, the PC, and the PSP. Now, let's gather up all these versions together for simplicity's sake. We got Group A over here, the silly Treyarch Trash Fires, and hey, the PC version was actually ported by Beanox. That's neat. Then we have the Vicarious Visionaries, which has its own branch or two. The Wii, PSP, and PS2 are all identical in terms of content, and honestly, this is the best version. I think. I don't know. It's a far uglier version for sure in some ways. They sometimes use movies of the HD version's cutscenes, but they also have their own. They have better models and animations, but everything in game looks bad. Like worse than Spider-Man 2 bad. It's so weird.
Hello? MJ? What do you want? No, I haven't found out anything. Don't call back! All those tests and nothing!
Oh my god! He's a vampire!
However, you get the black suit after like an hour, and the game lets you choose what you want to level up via a cool little spider web menu thing. While a lot of the missions play out the same way with some minor differences, the big deviation is trading up from some of the HD version's standard snooze fest villains with Morbius and a brand new version of Shriek! This has to be like her only game appearance outside of Maximum Carnage. She has a brand new origin too, and she lives in the sewers like a goddamn Morlock. That's awesome! The game is also less janky overall, but it's also way shorter and has no unlockable suits either, so it's still a very much mixed spider bag. Now, the DS version is your dime a dozen side-scroller, but it has some nicely animated 3D models and backgrounds, and I like the way the camera moves and tracks Spidey as he navigates the level. Unfortunately, all web-based abilities and combat are done through mindlessly swiping the touchscreen, and that in and of itself kinda ruins the experience. The GBA is sadly kinda worse. Compared to the handheld's Spidey 2 game, it's a massive step back from a visual standpoint and a lot less ambitious, chopping out the incredible 3D sprite-based web swinging sections. Now, in terms of gameplay, it plays it even safer than the DS, so it's a very bog-standard superhero action game that fails to stand out when put against the actual surprisingly solid GBA Spider-Verse. Oh, but it has Electro in it as an exclusive villain. Yay, Electro. Listen, I'm not gonna yank your web shooters any longer. Spider-Man 3 is an embarrassing fiasco and would mark the last superhero game Treyarch would ever develop by themselves, as Shabba Games took over the main duties on Web of Shadows before they were shut down not long after. Obviously, you can say that Treyarch were called away from superhero duty around this time, but something has to be said about the very mixed response it got from review outlets, which I guess makes sense given the film itself produced similar reactions. Activision would then go in a very different direction for Spider titles going forward, leaning much more into comic book trappings, which was probably for the best. They wouldn't need to pay Tobey Maguire for his passionate, sterling performances any longer.
Peter, what's gotten into you lately?
Nothing that's stopping your gums from flapping wouldn't solve.
So with that, I heartily award Spider-Man 3 a confused, slightly awkward, If you want to see me web up more arachnid-based goodness, shout out some suggestions in the comments below, or swing on over to the Flophouse VIP Patreon to nominate your own when you become a big radioactive spider boss. Stay safe, fellow wall crawlers, and I'll see you next time on the Mediocre Spider Mat.